Tracy, you can stop checking that report, Evan said, sliding my folder aside as if it were trash. You won't be needing it anymore. The words landed like a slap. I froze halfway through explaining a system audit that had taken my team 3 months to complete. The boardroom went quiet, except for the soft click of his pen. Behind him, the digital clock on the wall glowed 9:01 a.m. That was when he made the announcement calmly. Almost proudly, effective immediately. 41 positions will be terminated. Estimated savings $200,000 this quarter. My name appeared in the first line. I stared at the notice until the words blurred. Let's pause for a moment. How are you doing today, and where are you watching from? If this moment made your heart skip the way mine did, tap the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. My name is Tracy Cooper, Head of Client Trust Infrastructure. For over a decade, I've safeguarded the system that authenticates every billion-dollar transaction that passes through this company. I built it line by line, the architecture of digital trust, designed to require human verification from our senior engineers before any contract could execute. It wasn't just software, it was a safety net. For them. For us. But Evan Merrick, our newly appointed CEO, didn't see people, he saw numbers. He believed loyalty was outdated. That precision came cheaper when humans were replaced by algorithms. He arrived 3 weeks ago from a rival firm with slogans about lean efficiency and zero emotional overhead. Today, he'd made good on both. Across the table, Maria Holden, the HR director, tried to reason with him. Evan, this department controls our trust chain. Without them, the system, he waved his hand to interrupt her. Loyalty doesn't pay dividends. Maria, savings do. Those words hurt more than the termination notice. Around me, gray-haired analysts stared at their screens. Some whispered prayers. Some just sat, hands folded, as if waiting for someone to tell them it was a mistake. But it wasn't. It was policy. Evan gathered his papers and straightened his cufflinks. By this afternoon, we'll finalize the $1.8 billion deal, he said. Voice slick with pride. A leaner company, a stronger future. I didn't respond. He had no idea that the deal he was so eager to sign still required the verification codes tied to the 41 people he'd just fired. And as he left the room, the system we built, the one he dismissed with a smirk, quietly began its countdown toward the moment his empire would collapse. The room still smelled like coffee and panic, the login screen flashing a polite reminder that my access was revoked. The silence that followed was heavier than the morning announcement itself. I began gathering the scattered pieces of my workspace, old reports, notebooks, the coffee mug my team had given me last Christmas with the words, "Trust is built, not bought." The drawer stuck for a moment before sliding open. Inside lay a single photograph, our 15th anniversary team picture. Taken in the lobby just 6 months ago. 41 faces, all smiling, unaware of how disposable we'd soon become. My thumb brushed across the edge of the glossy print. Stopping at familiar faces, Ben from cybersecurity, Lisa from data compliance, Ellen standing in the back, flashing the peace sign like she always did. Every one of them was gone now. Fired. Erased in less than a minute. I set the photo beside my keyboard, trying to keep my breathing steady. The office around me had fallen into a kind of stunned paralysis, people packing boxes without words, cardboard scraping against carpet. Every sound felt amplified, almost unbearable, when I finally reached for the power button to log out one last time. The screen blinked unexpectedly. A single line appeared across the top in faint blue letters, Trustee ID active. Access pending. I froze. For a second. I thought it was a glitch. My clearance had been revoked. There was no reason the system should still recognize me. I leaned closer, heart pounding with something I couldn't quite name. Confusion, anger, a cruel kind of hope. The status light blinked again. Active. My phone buzzed on the desk, snapping me back. It was a message from Ellen, the youngest engineer on our team, the one who'd never stopped calling me mentor. Tracy, I just checked the system. Your name's still on the verification list. Did they forget to remove you? I stared at the text for a long time before typing anything. The truth was, I didn't know if it was a mistake or something deeper, a remnant of the network I'd built to resist automation. But I didn't have the energy to explain. Not today. Don't worry about it. I finally wrote back. They'll figure it out soon enough. Then I placed the photo into the top of my box. Face down. Around me. The office hummed faintly, as if pretending nothing had happened. I looked one last time at the glow of my monitor. That strange message still lingering on the screen, like an echo from a life already gone. No tears, no anger, just a hollow calm. The kind that comes when the heart decides silence is safer than protest. And as I turned off the light at my desk, the system still whispered quietly in the background. Active, pending, waiting. The elevator door slid open with a soft chime that felt almost cruel. We stood there, each holding the same cardboard box filled with fragments of a life we thought we'd built here. A mug, a photo frame, a half-used notebook, little things that once meant belonging. Now they just meant exit. No one spoke. The air was thick, heavy with the kind of silence that comes after too many years of loyalty and not enough respect. Every sound the rustle of a jacket. The scrape of a shoe felt like it didn't belong in this building anymore. I stood near the back, my reflection caught between glass panels, clutching the photo I'd found that morning. My face looked older than I remembered, tired, calm, and hollow all at once. Around me, gray-haired engineers, assistants, and analysts stared straight ahead. Their eyes glazed over. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was something colder, something close to humiliation. When the doors began to close, a movement caught my eye through the glass wall of the executive floor. Evan Merrick stood there, laughing, a glass of champagne raised high among investors. The very people he'd just thrown away were now descending into silence while he toasted his own brilliance. He didn't even look our way. He didn't have to. Ellen, the youngest among us, broke the silence first. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Do you regret it? Tracy staying here for 15 years, I looked at her. Her eyes were red, but not from crying. They were from disbelief. No, I said quietly. But I regret thinking people would understand the value of trust. The elevator hummed softly as we began to move down. Each floor number lit up and vanished like a countdown. No one answered. The only sound was the faint creak of cardboard under shifting weight. Halfway down, someone exhaled shakily. Someone else wiped their eyes. But most of us just stared at the doors, waiting for them to open as if freedom might feel less painful than this slow descent. The doors finally opened to the lobby. I paused for a second before stepping out. The reflection of the upper floors shimmered across the marble floor. Somewhere up there, Evan was celebrating a victory he didn't understand. As I stepped into the sunlight, I realized humiliation wasn't the worst part. It was the isolation knowing you'd built something designed to protect people, only to be erased by the very system you once believed in. The next morning, the company's homepage was flooded with headlines that made my stomach turn. Merrick Industries welcomes visionary CEO to lead digital transformation. And just as I predicted, his every action and word was live-streamed in an ostentatious and arrogant manner. There he was, Evan Merrick, the same man who'd gutted 41 careers in less than 1 minute. Now smiling under soft studio lighting, the press called him bold. The board called him a genius. To me, he was a man who measured value only in savings and silence. He'd come from a rival firm known for hostile takeovers and mass layoffs disguised as innovation. His philosophy was simple: cut people, keep profit. During his first week, he canceled employee wellness programs, replaced department meetings with algorithmic dashboards, and ordered every office plant removed because they don't generate ROI. At 10 a.m., he stood before a wall of cameras in the company auditorium, his voice steady, rehearsed, and chillingly confident. This is the beginning of a new era, he declared. AI and automation will replace 60% of our workforce by the end of this year. Efficiency isn't optional, it's survival. The crowd clapped weakly, unsure whether to applaud or hold their breath. His words hit like bullets, wrapped in corporate charm. Evan thrived on control, the kind that made others question their own worth. When reporters asked about the layoffs, he laughed. Sometimes you have to prune the tree to help it grow, he said. He didn't notice how many of us looked like the branches he'd already cut. After the cameras left, the internal finance briefing began. Martin Hale, our long-serving CFO, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Evan, he said carefully, I need to flag a concern. The trust infrastructure team you dismissed handled the Circle verification protocol. Without them, our upcoming $1.8 billion merger won't pass legal validation. Evan barely glanced at him. Martin, contracts are signed by machines now, not by people. Loyalty doesn't authenticate, revenue algorithms do. The words sank like stones in water. Martin's face tightened. He looked down at the table the same way I had yesterday when I read my termination notice. I saw it then, the resignation, the quiet acceptance of being outnumbered by arrogance. That moment carved something deep inside me, resentment mixed with a cold, heavy realization. Evan wasn't just careless, he was dangerous. He didn't destroy by accident. He dismantled deliberately, believing efficiency made him untouchable. As the meeting ended, he adjusted his cufflinks, smiling to himself. The cameras had left, but he was still performing. He thought he'd removed the last traces of human oversight. But systems built on trust don't forget the names of their architects. But before we see what happens next, tell me, if you were in Tracy's place, what kind of ending would you want? Justice, redemption, or something colder? Stay with me until the end of this story. The cafe across the street was quiet, except for the soft hum of the espresso machine and the occasional clatter of porcelain cups. Outside the window, the mirrored glass of the corporate tower glinted in the early afternoon light. I sat in the corner by the window, the one spot where I could still see the top floor where Evan's office was. He was probably in a meeting now, rehearsing his pitch to the investors for the $1.8 billion merger he called the company's rebirth. I opened my personal laptop, the one not yet scrubbed by HR's digital sweep, and logged into the internal network using my archived credentials. The system loaded slowly, the familiar interface blinking to life. My clearance level had been downgraded, but my old view-only access remained intact. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, my code the same structure I'd written to safeguard our contracts through human authentication. I scrolled down, my eyes scanning until they stopped at a phrase that made my pulse slow to an icy rhythm. Trust Circle, License 41. Active trustees required for validation. Deadline 2:45 p.m. I leaned back in my chair. The irony was almost poetic. The same 41 people Evan had cut to save $200,000 were the exact keys required for his billion-dollar deal to execute. Without them, the system would simply reject the contract. No override, no exceptions. I took a slow sip of my coffee, watching steam curl upward. For the first time in years, I didn't feel anger, just clarity, a cold, measured kind of understanding that comes when you stop trying to be understood. A soft ping broke the moment. I glanced at the corner of my screen. An email. From Legal Department, subject urgent. Verify Trust Circle status before final signing at 2:45 p.m. The message had been sent to the wrong address, my old company email, automatically forwarded to my personal inbox. I almost laughed. The system was doing what people no longer could remembering. For a long moment, I stared out the cafe window at the building that used to be mine, at the people inside, still unaware of the invisible fuse burning beneath their celebration. I could almost picture Evan pacing the conference room, confident, rehearsed, proud of the empire he thought he'd made efficient. They didn't know. They never did. I closed the laptop slowly, the reflection of the tower shimmering across its black screen. My voice came out barely above a whisper, more to myself than to anyone else. They have no idea what they're signing. Then I placed the cup down, calm and deliberate. as if even the smallest movement should match the precision of the system I had built, one designed not for revenge, but for truth. And truth, like code, never lies. The rooftop glistened under the noon sun, a flawless stage for arrogance dressed as success. Champagne bottles lined the tables, cameras flashed, and banners fluttered in the wind with words like "New Era of Innovation" printed in bold, proud font. Standing at the center of it all was Evan Merrick, the man who believed he had outsmarted the system and everyone in it. He raised his glass toward the skyline, his smile as polished as the glass tower behind him. "Today," he announced to the press, "we take the final step toward automation. I've transferred all verification rights to our new system. No more human dependency, no more delays. We're lean, efficient, and unstoppable." Applause erupted, brief but hollow. Reporters scribbled notes. Photographers captured his grin, mistaking it for vision instead of vanity. The leadership team stood behind him, smiling on cue. Only one man didn't, Martin Hale, the CFO. His gaze flicked between his tablet and the building's mirrored windows below. He leaned closer to Evan, lowering his voice. "Still says pending authorization," he muttered. Evan didn't even glance at the screen. He waved his hand like he was shooing away a fly. "Refresh it," he said, laughing. "The system's probably lagging from the media logins." "It's fine." Martin hesitated, his expression tightening. The sunlight caught the corner of his glasses, hiding the worry in his eyes. He'd seen this before, leaders so confident they mistook luck for intelligence, but he said nothing. Evan turned back to the cameras. "You see," he continued, voice booming through the microphone, "we no longer need a human signature to validate success. Machines don't sleep, don't hesitate, don't fail. This company is built on precision, not emotion." Below them, the city pulsed with life. Employees, investors, and partners watched the live feed from their screens. Unaware that behind Evan's speech lay a single unchecked truth, the system hadn't accepted his authority transfer. It had listed him not as a trustee, but as an observer, a man allowed to watch, not control. From the cafe across the street, I watched the broadcast through the window. His voice echoed faintly over the crowd's polite clapping. I almost pitied him, almost. Because arrogance this grand doesn't collapse quietly, it crashes spectacularly. He kept talking, basking in a victory that didn't exist. His reflection towering in every mirrored panel of the building. Around him, laughter and glasses clinked, the sound of people celebrating a future they didn't understand. Martin's phone buzzed again. He checked the time. 2:17 p.m. The message from legal flashed reminder. All 41 trustee verifications required before 2:45 p.m. He looked up at Evan, who was still smiling for the cameras, completely unaware that the ground beneath his empire was already cracking. And across the street, I whispered to no one, "Keep smiling. Evan, the system remembers what you don't." The wind caught his speech papers, scattering them into the open air, the perfect metaphor for a victory built on nothing but pride. The clock on my laptop read 1:17 p.m. when the notification appeared. A quiet ping. Almost polite. Subject final confirmation required before 2:45 p.m. I stared at the line for several seconds. The digital equivalent of a voice calling my name from a place I no longer belonged to. The trust circle was still active, still expecting 41 verification signatures that would never come. My hands hovered over the keyboard, muscle memory pulling me back to habits I thought I'd shed hours ago. I opened a blank email. The cursor blinked. Waiting. To Martin Hale, CFO, subject, check the circle before signing. I could almost see his face as he read it, the cautious frown, the brief flash of understanding, the panic that would follow. I could stop it all with 10 words. One email. One click. But then I thought of that morning. Evan's smirk. Maria's trembling voice. The sound of silence swallowing 41 people at once. And I remembered the look in Martin's eyes when he lowered his head instead of speaking up. My finger hovered over send. Then I pressed backspace. Slowly, deliberately, I erased every word until the screen was empty again. When I closed the window, the system asked, "Delete draft." I clicked, yes. The line "draft deleted" flashed briefly like a final heartbeat before disappearing from the corner of the screen. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from Ellen. "If the system collapses, you'll warn them." Right, I didn't answer at first. I stared out the cafe window, watching the reflection of the tower where they were probably setting up champagne glasses and press kits for the signing ceremony. A storm was building not in the sky, but inside the network. I could feel it. Finally. I typed back, "They didn't believe me when I was still there. Why would they now?" The typing bubbles appeared, then vanished. She didn't reply. Maybe she understood. I leaned back in my chair, fingers tracing the rim of my coffee cup. The liquid had gone cold. So had the part of me that once believed loyalty could change anything. There's a kind of pain that doesn't burn anymore. It just settles. Quiet and permanent. Like dust after an explosion, across the street. The mirrored glass of the tower shimmered in the afternoon sun. Somewhere behind those windows, the countdown ticked on, 41 signatures missing. One CEO too confident to notice. I closed my laptop. The reflection on its surface showed nothing but the building and the clouds above it, drifting slow and calm, unaware of the collapse they were about to witness. For the first time that day, I didn't feel angry, just tired. And when you've given everything, sometimes silence is the only language left. It was 2:43 p.m. when the screen in the boardroom flickered to life. The entire floor had gone quiet, the kind of silence that always follows pride before the fall. Cameras were rolling, champagne glasses lined the table, and a dozen executives leaned forward as Evan placed his hand dramatically on the digital tablet that would finalize the $1.8 billion deal. I watched the live stream from the cafe across the street. He looked confident, rehearsed the star of his own show. He pressed confirm. The system froze. On the massive LED wall behind him, a single red line of text appeared. Trustee verification missing. Authorization failed. At first, no one reacted. The press waited for the next slide, assuming it was part of a presentation. But Evan's smile faltered. He tapped the tablet again. Nothing. "Is this a glitch?" one of the investors asked. Evan's jaw tightened. Must be. He turned to the IT director in the corner of the room. "Reset the portal." The man's fingers danced across the keyboard, his expression draining with every click. Finally, he looked up, pale. "Sir, it's not a glitch. The system says all 41 trustee accounts were deleted at 9:01 a.m. The words hit harder than any explosion could. The investors exchanged confused looks. Maria, the HR director, covered her mouth. Martin Hale, the CFO, removed his glasses slowly, his hands trembling. Evan straightened his tie. "That's ridiculous. Override it with an admin key." The IT director hesitated, then nodded. Martin stepped forward instead, typing his own credentials, the master clearance for emergency overrides. The screen blinked once, then turned black. A new message appeared. Sharp and final, unauthorized signature detected. Session terminated. The room erupted. Phones rang. Voices rose. Chairs scraped against the floor. Someone shouted for legal. Someone else yelled to cut the live stream feed. Reporters began snapping photos, sensing blood in the water. Through the chaos, Evan's voice cut through, harsh and strained. "Fix it. I want that system online now." The IT director's voice cracked. "We can't." "Sir, it's locked out. Only the original trustees can verify access, then rehire them." Evan snapped. Martin's voice, soft but steady, was the last one to rise. "You fired them. Evan, you can't rehire integrity." The sentence hung in the air. Evan turned toward him, eyes burning. But there was no comeback, just the reflection of red text blinking on the screen behind him, repeating the same phrase over and over. Authorization failed. Authorization failed. Authorization failed. Across the street. I sat perfectly still, my hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. It wasn't satisfaction, I felt not exactly. It was something quieter, something heavier. Justice. Maybe, in its truest, most unsentimental form, inside that boardroom. Panic spread like smoke. The empire Evan had built on arrogance and shortcuts was cracking before the world's eyes, collapsing under the weight of its own cruelty. And as the clock struck 2:45 p.m., the system I'd created did exactly what it was designed to do: protect trust from those who didn't deserve it. For the first time all day, I allowed myself to breathe. The moment the black screen cleared, a live feed from the partner firm's headquarters appeared. Rows of executives filled the screen, their faces stern, emotionless. The lead investor, a woman in a navy suit with a voice like cold glass, leaned toward the camera. "Without your verified trust circle, our legal department declares the contract void." The words echoed through the boardroom like a death sentence. For a second, no one moved. Then Evan laughed, that desperate, brittle kind of laugh people use when denial is the only thing left to hold on to. "There must be a miscommunication," he said, straightening his tie. "Our system glitched during the signing. We'll reset and send a verification within minutes." The investor's expression didn't change. "Your system is irrelevant. Mr. Merrick, our compliance team confirms your authentication framework no longer exists." Evan's voice cracked. That's impossible." Behind him, the red banner on the presentation wall still flashed the same phrase in looping defiance. "Authorization failed," reporters whispered. Cameras zoomed in. You could feel the air thinning as reality closed in. Martin Hale, the CFO, stepped forward. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "No, Evan," he said quietly, his tone slicing through the chaos. "It's not a glitch. You fired every single person capable of verifying that deal. You deleted the foundation. And now you're standing in the ruins." The room went silent again, this time with finality. The investors on the screen stared, unmoved. Someone from PR rushed toward the camera crew, whispering urgently, trying to end the broadcast. But it was too late. The live stream had already been running for 7 minutes. Across social media, the clip was spreading like wildfire. Trust collapse began trending before the meeting even ended. Evan's composure cracked completely. "Shut it down!" he shouted, slamming his palm against the table. "Cut the feed!" His voice bounced against the glass walls. But no one moved. Even security looked uncertain. Maria Holden, the HR director, whispered something under her breath, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. Someone's phone buzzed. The legal advisor's face drained as he read the message. "Our shares just dropped 8% in the last 3 minutes," he said quietly. Evan turned pale. That's not possible. But it was. Outside the boardroom, reporters swarmed, flashes reflecting off the glass. Inside, executives whispered, shifting blame, drafting resignation emails. The empire built on numbers and arrogance was imploding in real time. From my seat at the cafe across the street, I watched through the window, the sound muted but the chaos perfectly visible. For a long moment, I felt nothing but stillness, the kind that comes when karma stops circling and finally lands. Evan was still speaking, but no one was listening. Every word only deepened the silence around him. Power doesn't die with noise, it dies with realization. And as the screen faded to black once more, justice, quiet and merciless, had finally arrived. It was 2:50 p.m. when the cafe clock chimed faintly above the doorway. The sun had shifted just enough for the glass tower across the street to gleam like a mirror, bright and unreachable. Just then, I received an email. I opened my laptop. A line of quiet blue text appeared. "Contract lock successful. System integrity preserved." I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Outside, The chaos had already begun. News vans were parked along the curb, reporters shouting questions to anyone leaving the building. The tower that once symbolized control now looked fragile, a monument to arrogance, undone by its own ignorance. People passed the cafe window without noticing me, carrying their phones, their urgency, their disbelief. I watched quietly, for the first time in years. I didn't feel invisible. I felt free. The system had done exactly what it was meant to protect, what was rightfully built on trust. There was no revenge, no sabotage, only consequence. When you create something honest, it eventually tells the truth for you. A week later, I received an email from a familiar address. The sender was one of our long-term clients, the same company whose contracts had been frozen during the collapse. The subject line read, "Future Collaboration." I opened it. "We've reviewed everything that happened. From now on, we'll only work with the people who built the system, not those who broke it." I reread the message twice before closing my laptop. No rush of triumph, came only quiet relief. Like a breath I'd been holding for too long, finally released. That same morning, the financial papers hit the newsstands with a headline that needed no explanation. CEO Merrick resigns amid 1.8B collapse. I saw his photo beneath it, the same confident smile he'd worn on the rooftop. Now reprinted under a story about accountability. No hatred surfaced in me. No satisfaction either. Just stillness. Justice had arrived without needing my hands to guide it. The cafe was nearly empty now. I turned my cup slowly between my palms, watching the reflection of the tower shimmer across its surface. The world outside moved on cars. Voices. Life indifferent, but somehow lighter. I whispered to no one in particular. Integrity costs more to replace than it does to keep. The words lingered for a moment before dissolving into the hum of the city. I stood, gathered my things, and stepped into the afternoon light, not as someone fired, but as someone freed. Because sometimes victory doesn't look like a headline. It looks like peace. If you like this story, hit like, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories that remind us even in silence, truth still finds its voice.